Okay. Should we go get some food then?
Grub.
Grub.
Go get some grub.
I'm talking about food, mate.
So I had a question for you.
Oh,
Really a question.
okay.
Been playing on my mind for a while.
Didn't see that coming.
Not with all these mics. Yeah, so you wrote on LinkedIn one time. I remember the word VUCA so much because it reminds me of Veruca, but that was how your post started. You were talking about the evolution of policy communications in Brussels, how things have changed, how there are still some things that people don't like to admit. One of those things was about like public opinion, not needing public opinion to actually influence policy in Brussels, but a lot of people get just trapped on a side quest trying to change public opinion. So I guess you think that they don't need to do that. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about those things.
I remember that post well.
Yes.
Yeah. So that rant, which most posts are, was in response to a feeling that people like to jump on new things. So the narrative, like the macro narrative is like the world's changing so fast. There's so much uncertainty. Then VUCA is the thing that you hear a lot. I think it's, what is it?
Volatility.
Uncertainty, chaos. I don't know.
Yeah.
All the crazy. Oh my God. My point of view is kind of everything is changing really fast. There's lots of uncertainty, but not here. Right?
Right.
So here it's actually, what happens in the Brussels bubble happens mostly outside of that. There's a certain effect that it has on what we do, but it's not like you have to rethink things, right? So at the end of the day, it's not like this quick adaptation game. It's just recognizing that the Brussels bubble exists in its own universe and everything, and it's already kind of defined. It knows how it works, and you don't have to think too hard about it. Ultimately, it's a bunch of small professional communities. Everybody's at work. Everybody needs to kind of be congenial and not have much conflict because they all need to get along with each other. So it's like this one big, I know X calls itself the town square, but the Brussels bubble really is like a town square. And then even like physically, it's mostly happening within a few square kilometers in Brussels. Everyone kind of knows each other. So we don't need to pretend like there's so much volatility and uncertainty that we don't know what to do. Oh my God, we need to jump on this new thing. In fact, what you just need to jump on is the tried and tested stuff of building relationships within small groups, right? So the whole kind of, shiny new thing that you should get on, do this thing fast because if you don't, you'll be left behind. It just doesn't apply. And I think people find that a little bit, I think I call it an unpopular opinion because people kind of want to be part of the action, just like way back when House of Cards came out on Netflix, and it'd be like, that's us. We're lobbyists and there's a show about us. But then everyone's like, yeah, it's not really us, right? So we're just not as exciting as we would like to be. And we probably have the answers to all of our questions already because things change, but maybe at a glacial pace instead of a very volatile and uncertain, chaotic pace.
But then based off of that, how do you, since Bump is all about being creative and creative policy comms, how do you, within those constraints of self-constraints, because you're saying you don't need to go so far outside of the box, how do you be creative then within those constraints?
Well, I think it's even more fun, right? Because the parameters are fixed. It's almost like a US presidential election analogy, right? The rules of the game are clear. You know how it has, the electoral college, like the system doesn't really align with the reality of all of the populace, but the rules are the rules, right? So here in Brussels, you know what the rules are, that small groups of people will decide things. Small groups of people who you already know. So all you need to do is ingratiate yourself or be part of those small communities and offer some value, know the right people, and show up in the right places, be invited into the right rooms, right? So to do that is not rocket science. It's very doable. But then the creativity comes where, if everyone and their brother and their sister has the same access as you do to everything, you have a very clear level playing field. Then you have to think, okay, if everyone can do this, how am I going to do it better? And that's the creativity. So the creativity is not like go nuts and think about the craziest stuff you can do. Think about the smartest stuff that you can do within the constraints that you have. Because creativity really comes from constraints. It doesn't come from blue sky, do whatever you want, infinite budgets, whatever. So, just know just focus on those small audiences. Don't worry about this idea that you have to be everywhere, or you hear that a lot, like we need to reach new audiences. Like, you absolutely do not, right? You don't. But no, you don't. So just focus on those audiences and then you'll figure it out.
Who would you say most needs to hear that in Brussels? Is it the comms people and leads themselves, or is it the senior business leaders? Is it the SecGens?
It's probably usually less the comms people, especially if they're senior comms people who kind of like, they're focused on the audience, they know what works. And anyone telling them that they need to focus on yet another audience or a broader audience, they just see like, yeah, that's just a distraction, right? So I think it tends to be people who don't work directly in comms, or sometimes it's really, really senior people not working in comms who have become kind of bored with the idea or refuse to accept that their world exists in a parallel plane to the real world, right? Mm-hmm. They desperately want to like be part of the big picture and the big story. And it's really hard for them to admit that, unfortunately, or maybe it's not unfortunate, I don't know, that they do exist outside of that. So it's not a tier 1 major city. No. It's not a financial capital. It's not something that will ever be really front page news. I mean, it is sometimes, but quite rarely, right? Yeah. So you just have to accept that you live in this parallel universe and just work with that. And if you want to go talk to consumer audiences, or you want to talk to literally everybody and you need 1 million video views or impressions, then you maybe want to be somewhere other than Brussels, because that's just not really the game at all. Let's change gears to something else.
So I have a question, Brett. Okay. I don't know if you remember, but we had a meeting a while back, and it actually inspired a LinkedIn post from you where we went into this meeting, and it was the first time we were meeting some of these people from this client, and we introduced Bump and said, hey, we're an agency, a creative agency that specializes in policy comms. And they just immediately got it, which was like such a light bulb moment, I think, for us, because I think sometimes we spend a lot of time overthinking like how we present that and explaining kind of why that's justified. But yeah, just wanted to get your thoughts as well on like, do you see that as something that is evolving in Brussels, that people recognize that this is something that is a service that these people need? Or do you think it's something that only, very niche specific people are working in? Like, how do you see that evolving in recent years in Brussels?
Yeah, so I remember that meeting. We won't name the client, but it was a technology company. Mm-hmm. So I think that says something. I've always thought that the tech industry kind of got on board with the idea that policy communications was a thing before others did. And in fact, they were among the first to use that title. Yeah. And there's even another tech company client we have, which has a policy experience person who has that title. Right. So they're always like not shy about calling things what they are, and not trying to say, oh, well, actually it's digital, or it's comms, or it's social media. They're not taking the easy way out. So I think, do like a lot of organizations get that? Well, the term policy communications, I think, has really caught on, even in the last, I don't know what you guys think, but in the last year or so, you see it more and more. Politico had a report where they said like the state of policy communications or something, which I remember seizing on to say, look, they said it, therefore it's a thing. Yeah. I think the creative part of that, and the fact that for a while I was afraid to call us a creative consultancy, because as long as I've been around, there's no creative jobs. You never have creative in the title, and you wouldn't want to say that because it's like it seems too soft and not essential.
It's vague and not like tangible almost. Right. Yeah.
And it's just because people, what was creative would have been called digital or social media. So people use words that feel, I don't know why they use those words, but like there was like a digital revolution, and therefore you had to be digital.
Everyone was in digital. Yeah.
Yeah. And you had to have social media. And then you kind of had to have content that came out a little bit. Mm-hmm. And well, those are all creative jobs, but you can never say that. The idea that you would even you'd have like a creative strategy lead or a creative director, that was like unheard of. But at every other agency in every other part of the world, you would have that.
Normal, yeah.
So then, it was a good opportunity for us to say, that's really who we are. And I think that meeting was a turning point, because it told us that we could just say who we were instead of just trying to say to speak the language that we thought we had to speak. So it's kind of us claiming what we always thought.
We're not trying to justify our existence, and like people get it.
Yeah, like it can be a thing. Obviously it is, because we're all gainfully employed, and I think it kind of helps like the community of public affairs people understand what, first of all, that policy communications is a discipline, and that creativity within that is a discipline as well. And you can have all those jobs. Like in Brussels, you always have to prove that something that has existed for decades elsewhere can exist here. I don't know why that's the case. You just need to do that, right? There would have been a time where there was no comms director either, right? And people still have to justify why there should be a comms director instead of basically a social media manager, right? Nothing against social media managers, but it's not the whole thing. It's just the social media, right? So I think, the more that we can say creative, the better. And then hopefully in 5-10 years time, you'll see, just as you saw digital people, social media people, you'll start to see creative people. And those will be not just people who make things, but people who also do strategy, which is the big piece that was missing, is that you would recognize creative strategy as like a sophisticated thing that you spend a decent amount of money on. All right. So you've just arrived to Brussels. You're thinking, I heard of this policy comms thing. I'm going to make a career out of that. Right. Top 3 skills. Why are you laughing? It's a viable thing. So back to my question was, top 3 skills that you would recommend your younger self if you're like, okay, I'm going to do this policy communications thing. Top 3, go. Give me one.
Pressure. I would say a willingness to learn new things can be really useful. When I first came to Brussels, I knew absolutely nothing about how the EU worked, and I had a lot to learn about not just like how people interact in like a professional setting, but also just how this entire set of institutions functions and why it's built that way. So I think for me, it just took a lot of independent study in a way. So just being really open to learning new things, being a sponge when you get here and meet people, ask questions, be curious. So I think that's like a really important skill set in a city like Brussels. You just have to be willing to learn new things.
Cool. Number 1. Number 2, hook me up.
So I would actually say number 1 would even be just go get experience elsewhere, because you'll get all the comms and marketing knowledge that you can then bring to Brussels and be like 5-10 years ahead of the game. But okay, putting that to one side, because you're intent on coming to Brussels and living out your policy communications dream, I would say one like very good foundational skill is to learn how to write clearly, and everything else you do will be impacted by that.
Cool. Do I get to say 3?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, because you both give your number 1s. Yeah. I would say that in the very specific context of what we do, which is mostly, policy communications is of course what it is. There's no other name for it, but it's on behalf of usually like private sector, so business or trade associations. There's a few NGOs that creep in, but mostly it's the first 2 things, is having some awareness of business context and strategy that speaks to a business objective. So very concretely, if you can, in 5 bullet points, list the different components of a strategy, and I know it could be a comm strategy, it could be a public, it doesn't matter. They always start with, the objective, the message, channels, tactics, results, that kind of thing. But whatever you can do, if you can tie whatever you're suggesting back to a business outcome, then you're just speaking the language of a lot more people with decision-making power much faster, instead of just saying we should do some stuff, right? So always be able to go back to the business side of things, and money is what everyone understands, even in the NGO sector.
But if you could put that into like, because for Ali's one, it requires like research. For my one, practice, I guess. For your one, what could somebody tangibly do to get better at that?
So I think if you're not in a place where business is part of it, then, if you need to give yourself an assignment, it's just say, okay, company A is doing, I know that company A, which I've heard of, is in Brussels doing something. What could they possibly be doing, right? And they're always either protecting some part of their business, or they're trying to create an opportunity for some part of their business. So even if you don't know, like, why are they here? They must be trying to make sure that this thing doesn't get banned, or they're still allowed to sell this, all those things, and just try to work backwards to that objective, right? So they're here trying to get this done. Therefore, who do they need to reach to get that done? What do they need to say to get that done? Who are the other parties saying things that will stop them from getting that done? And then also, whatever they do in Brussels, how will they explain back to HQ what they're doing? Because HQ is usually like, what's this Brussels thing? I know I need to have you, but I'll never understand why, and I don't have time to hear about it. I don't want to hear all of the great things that you've learned, because you're open to learning new things, and the EU 101, and like, oh, the Court of Justice, the Council, like, it's nobody cares. They just want to know, like, the bottom line. They're like, really give me the 90-second version of this. You really have to be able to speak the language of just regular people, and the news flash is that we are not regular people. We're living in a parallel universe, and no one will ever understand us, and that's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your point of view.
Bonus question. Other than that, then, what is the most underrated skill that a comms pro in Brussels can have?
Versatility. If you're really good at a lot of different things, you're very valuable to your team. I don't say that as a way to get people to try to hire their magical unicorn comms person who can do every single thing under the sun, but if you're someone who's really interested in, say, social media and writing, find ways to develop those skills. If you're someone who's interested in graphic design, maybe try to give yourself some projects to build up your portfolio and see if you can integrate that into your work. But just being a bit more flexible, because I think comms roles in general just require a lot of different skill sets. So being flexible and versatile and, growing as you grow into your role, I think is a very underrated skill that a lot of comms people possess.
I would say underrated, especially in Brussels, is like a sense of artistic sensibility, or an artistic sensibility, to be simpler. Because I feel like if you're a comms manager in Brussels, especially Brussels being what it is, weirdly comms teams are either tiny, like one person, or just overblown with lots of people. And I feel like if you're on that one person team or 2-person team, you can kind of get by if you have good project management skills, you write quite clearly. Even better if you have some sense of like business objectives and things like that. And then the only other thing you'd really need is like a sense for what looks and feels good, because then you can just use good agencies, and you will pick a good agency because you have that sense. And when they produce things, you'll be able to say what feels right and what doesn't. And you can just really leverage that, because a lot of people use agencies in Brussels. So, but I feel like it's a bit of an underrated skill. It's maybe sounds a bit pompous, that's why, but nobody really talks about like someone's artistic sensibility.
The thing that I would say is the people side. So honestly think that 75% of whatever you're trying to get done comes down to your ability to take other people with you and to form really genuine relationships with them based on like caring about them. Like, so if you can form relationships with people, if people can trust you, and you deserve their trust, then I think that's a huge underrated skill. No one ever teaches you people skills. They just figure that you're a person, you must have people skills. But interpersonal skills are just like the thing, in a town which is run by small communities of people, that's what gets things done. And often decisions are made by consensus. So it's rarely, if you're a company, you have to go convince HQ why you have to do something, and there's a bunch of people involved. If you're a trade association, you have a bunch of members that you have to get on the same page. No one here is running the business alone, right? We're not a bunch of SMEs who are like, this is what I want, I'm going to go get it. I don't have to have anyone's permission. We all have to ask someone's permission. Therefore, in order to get their permission, we're going to have to figure out some way of doing that. The easy way that people take is to just do the lowest common denominator stuff, which ends in the worst work, right? And maybe no one expects you to do anything better than just the basic stuff, but then you're like, is this the job that I?
Yeah. Then it's not fulfilling.
Yeah.
So that's also
Then you might as well just do anything else.
Yeah.
Right.
Then why be in Brussels working here?
Something that I have wanted to do for a while is to make fun of your accent. So what I think that Ali and I would enjoy doing.
Which accent? All right.
Is that, so I'm from Ohio and Ali's from
Kentucky.
yeah, so the game that I have in mind is you say something and then we imitate you.
Okay. Do you want to give me a sentence or
Do you want to give me a sentence?
my voice is nowhere near that tone.
My voice.
Oh, it's way off. It's way off. Oh, it's not
What is
close.
something that you think that we could say and you would approve of it?
Oh man, just say any. Give me a line. Give me a sentence, and I will.
Can you maybe just tell us where we can get the best fish and chips? And you shouldn't get them at this place, but definitely at this place.
Don't get fish and chips at any like chain. Just get it at the like nearest corner fish and chip shop.
So just get it.
Go on.
I feel like you're Americanizing your accent.
Oh
for
my
us.
god. I'm chameleon.
Corner.
Corner. Yeah,
Was that pretty good?
it was all right. Corner.
Was all right. Brit. No, that was that was New Zealand, right?
Just do the days of the week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Sorry, what now?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Monday, Tuesday.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
What is this like Ringo Starr type vibe you're throwing in? Monday. It's Monday, Tuesday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay.
What about he kicked because he's moist? I don't-
Say it again.
He kicked
Because
because he's moist.
he's moist.
Yeah, it's not
No.
there.
It just
What
sounds
about
wrong.
I went to Manny with the boys.
I went to Manny with the boys.
I don't know what I could say about that. I went to Manny.
What's Manny?
Manchester.
Manchester.
I'm not from there. I wouldn't know. So we just cut out a bunch of stuff because it wasn't that good. Habib kind of failed on that front. So what he's going to do is in 30 seconds or less, he's going to do 5 different UK accents.
Oh my god.
Take us to Liverpool.
Liverpool.
Take us to Manchester.
City.
All right.
United.
Take us to Scotland.
Oh, Scotland. I can do a Scotland accent. Hey.
All right. Jump over to Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland. Brett, you know, I love Northern Ireland.
Do they just go around singing?
Northern Ireland. All these people just say the names of places.
Yeah. And then finally, another place.
Wales. I can do Wales. It's one of the best accents. Pontypandy.
So that's been the show because we did some accents. Bro.
Bruv.